Hello and welcome to Modinomics 3.0. On the show today, we discuss a politically sensitive subject, the fine line between financial prudence and populism. After what was a non-populist interim budget this February, the big question that we are asking now is that will the Modi government respond to the changed political realities this time around when the budget is presented? With elections in 3 major states around the corner, the issue is, can the budget hold the line on populism?
Ladli Behna, Ladli Lakshmi, and now Ladla Bhai. Maharashtra's Eknath Shinde government is bending backwards under the pressure of populism after a disappointing show in Lok Sabha elections. The latest scheme, announced just 19 days after a freebies-laden state budget was presented, promises a stipend and job opportunities to young men. State assembly elections are just 3 months away, and the Mahayuti alliance has clearly taken a leaf out of the Congress Khatakhat manual.
अगर आप गरीबी रेखा के नीचे हो, आपके बैंक अकाउंट में हर साल 1 लाख रुपया, 8,500 रुपया महीने का खटाखट 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 आता रहेगा.
The promise of freebies seemed to have clicked politically and brought the Congress back to power in Karnataka and Himachal Pradesh. It's another matter that both states are now in a financial morass, seeking a bailout from the central government. The Karnataka government even went a step further in the populism stakes by legislating a quota for Kannadigas in private jobs, a move that it later retracted. The Congress also had to fend off women lining up outside its office in Lucknow after elections looking for the promised Khatakhat cash transfers into their bank accounts.
एक स्टेट में बर्डन इतना सा हो रही है प्रॉमिसेस देने के कारण, बाकी सब काम डेवलपमेंट के काम रुकावट में आ गए. क्या देश भर का काम और अभी वायदा देने में जनता आपके ऊपर भरोसा रखेगी?
However, election results have twisted political realities this past month. With more electoral battles ahead and the economy chugging ahead full steam, the Modi government is expected to loosen its purse strings. More SOPs are expected for farmers, with the government likely to hike the payout under PM Kisan scheme from the current 6,000 rupees a year. Higher direct transfers to women below poverty line are also expected. Allocations to the PM Awas Yojana and the PM Gram Sadak Yojana could also see a bump in the budget. The National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme could also see higher allocations. Importantly, the government is expected to entice the middle class with much-needed tax SOPs in the budget. There is, however, an upside. The higher spending on social and rural schemes will not only ensure new jobs, but will also provide increased income to those hit by rising prices and boost consumption to support the economy as well as satisfy the industry. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
Do political parties have the right to empty a state's coffers to win elections? It was in the heat of the general elections that the India Today group had asked Prime Minister Narendra Modi about the issue of political freebies. This is what he had to say then.
पॉलिटिकल पार्टियों ने चुनाव जीतने के लिए खजाने खाली करने चाहिए क्या? सैद्धांतिक मुद्दा ये है. क्या मुझे खजाना लूटाने का अधिकार है क्या? मुझे एम्पावरमेंट के लिए योजनाएं बनाने का हक है, लेकिन चुनाव है इसलिए मैं लूटा दूं, ये तरीका कितना उचित है, ये सोचने का विषय है. और दुनिया में जिन जिन देशों की ये हालत हुई है, वो हमारे पास उदाहरण है कि भाई हमने अब देखिए क्या होता है. आप एक शहर में मेट्रो बनाते हैं और उसी शहर में चुनाव जीतने के लिए कहते हैं कि हम महिलाओं को बस में फ्री ले जाएंगे. मतलब आपके मेट्रो के 50% पैसेंजर आपने ले लिए, तो मेट्रो वायबल नहीं होगी. अब भविष्य में मेट्रो बनेगी कि नहीं बनेगी, चिंता ये है. ये समझ कोई इस रूप में कोई चिंता चर्चा नहीं करता है. अब हम पॉलिटिकल तू मैं पे चले जाते हैं, मुझे वो नहीं करना है जी। मैं बिल्कुल कॉन्क्रीट बात करता हूँ कि आप बस इसके कारण क्या हुआ, एक तो ट्रैफिक को भी प्रॉब्लम किया, एनवायरनमेंट को भी प्रॉब्लम किया, आपने मुफ्त का कर दिया, और इधर मेट्रो आपने खाली कर दी। अब वो मेट्रो कैसे आगे बढ़ेगी, देश कैसे आगे बढ़ेगा?
Prime Minister Modi, they are asking some very, very important questions, and clearly these are issues which have very strong arguments on either side. But remember, tax revenues have been at record highs, and headline GDP growth is also chugging along at a steady pace. And therefore, will the government continue to prioritize public investment over giveaways? For answers to that, I'm joined by Dheeraj Nair, Chief Economist at Vedanta, Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist at the Bank of Baroda, and Shankar Iyer, Political Economy Analyst, Author and Columnist. Shankar, I'll come to you to set the broader context. Do you think the Modi government will respond to the changed political realities and do a balance between some amount of populism and stay on the path towards infrastructure development led by capex?
Well, I think, Siddharth, this government, new is basically old. We will see a response to what we heard in the election campaign about inflation, about unemployment, about affordability. The interesting thing is, if you look at it as a strategic approach, the political compulsion is also an economic imperative. We know that while GDP growth has been 8+%, private financial consumption, final consumption has been subpar at around 4. So there will be some transfer of money from the exchequer to the private pockets. This will be designed to address some political constituencies. We saw some of it already in Maharashtra, where the universal income for women has been expanded. The good news is that the RBI has given the government a bounty, sort of a bonanza of over 1 lakh crore, which they can use. How they deploy this money is critical to what we will see unrolling in the results of companies and in private balance sheets. I think that there will be some attempt to assuage the interests or the anger among the farmer community. There will be some announcements. There will definitely be some committee approach. And since the two allies in Andhra Pradesh and Bihar want special status and packages, I think that will be outsourced to another committee, and probably the Finance Commission will be asked to take a call on this.
Okay. Dheeraj, I'm coming to you. There's some amount of concern around a turn towards populism, while the markets would actually welcome that. Where do you stand on this? Will it be continuity with some change, or will the government continue to do what it believes in for the past several years?
Obviously there is a political context now, as has been said, which is different from 6 months ago. But, I don't really see, a dramatic turn towards, populism at this particular point in time. Because, if you look at the government, it's a fairly stable government. It's not really dependent on any one party. There are stable allies. So, and I don't think there is any immediate fear of, the government not being stable. And I think, where the SOPs will come, and as Shankar mentioned, it's already come in Maharashtra, will have to be at the state level, because the next set of battles are really in a particular, in 3 states. And then, after a year, there'll be in another state, another 2 states, and then in other states. So if you do it now, if you take a, lunge towards populism now, the dividend, political dividend that will yield is not clear. So I don't see, a major lurch towards populism. Yes, there may be, some expansion of some of the schemes, the one for farmers, for example, or, maybe a pension scheme. There may be some, as I said, at the margins, an expansion on spending. But I don't really see, this government, opening the taps and, letting loose at this point. So I suspect very much that their focus will still remain on, capital spending and on, controlling the fiscal deficit. And in the end, I'm of the belief that, 5 years down or whenever the next election is, the judgment will come not so much in terms of welfare, what they've done for welfare, because that they've already done. I think now the aspiration has grown to jobs, better jobs. So I think the focus, therefore, should be much more on productive spending, on policy reform, and how to generate jobs, good jobs for the masses, rather than talking about welfare forever. Because I think the welfare dividend, if I may say so, is not going to last forever. Even if they do it now, it's not going to last 5 years from now. And how much populism can you do?
We are debating what the Modi government is likely to do in the forthcoming budget. Madan, the point that both the speakers have made, and I'm coming to you, do you think the RBI bonanza is likely to be used to fund giveaways which may not create jobs, may result in a short-term feel-good and an increase in consumption? Or do you expect the government to stand up and say that, hey, we will continue down the path that we have and we will not increase our welfare spending vis-a-vis capex?
Siddharth, if we look at the tax buoyancy so far, combine this with the bonanza which you got from the RBI, I think the government is in a very, very comfortable position. You will be in a position where you can reduce the fiscal deficit by 1 lakh crores or even more, because 1 lakh crores is just what the excess which RBI has given. There will also be money coming from other public sector financial institutions. That's one. You could also be spending it on social welfare schemes. Third, you could also be giving income tax concessions, something which is required if you want to spur consumption and savings. It will not be a big amount, but something which is definitely required. And you can also do something on capital expenditure. So I think this is a very comfortable position which the government is in, because the revenues have been very good. And I think that if the revenues are good, I don't think we should be having any objection to the government spending a little more on social welfare, because I think that is required. Because, actually, Siddharth, I don't quite agree with this term populism. Why do we call anything which is given to the common man populist, whereas when I give something to corporate India in terms of income, corporate tax concessions, they don't deliver on investment, they don't deliver on PLI, that is not considered to be populism. So I think it's a very, very subjective term. I think the government has been very, very pragmatic in terms of finding the balance between fiscal prudence, which is what they will definitely do, and also be spending wherever it's required, give tax concessions where it's required. And the fact that we have this extra revenue coming from the RBI as well as from the buoyancy we've seen in tax collections, I think it will be much easier to deliver on all these factors.
Shankar, was the reversal for the Bharatiya Janata Party, which now has to face a new reality of not being on a majority on its own in the Lok Sabha, it was used to that for the past 10 years. Was the recent political setback on account of economics or issues like caste and fears around reservations, which have nothing to do with budgetary matters, allocations or infrastructure? Shankar?
I think the economic reality was the fertile ground on which politics was played, and the consolidation of certain communities which were the most affected by the impact of the economic issues. Agricultural distress, unemployment, vacant public sector jobs, all of this impact the bottom of the pyramid much more than any other sector. And they impact a certain community, certain communities, let me put it that way, much more. And that consolidation, so it was a fertile ground in terms of, every opinion poll spoke about public concern about unemployment and about inflation. And the opposition simply built on it. That they couldn't sort of take it to the winning post suggests that there is still some hope about how the Modi government will address it. The real political issue, Siddharth, that the government faces now is 3 very critical elections in the next 3 months. In October, in Maharashtra, Haryana, and Jharkhand. And that will swing the pendulum of public opinion and the party internal dynamics of the Bharatiya Janata Party. So these elections are critical in every which way. And so the strategic approach would be to sort of do the big things like probably this switch or the incentivizing of the new pension scheme over the old pension scheme. There might be some top up of the farmer thing, but there will also be room for relocation of infrastructure in the states which go to polls, and also the two states from where the allies are come.
The debate around higher capital expenditure contributing positively to GDP growth post-pandemic is continuing. Given a choice, would you want welfare spending to be targeted better, and some of the schemes that we see today, for example, the free food grain scheme, that was a COVID era specific measure, do you think it should continue, or certain recalibration is now required?
If you look at it, the government has actually already recalibrated schemes. So we look at the free food scheme when it came during COVID time. We already had a PDS scheme which was part of the food subsidy. Then what the government has done is that they've actually merged the two. So today, if you see the total outlay of around 2 lakh crores was broadly the number which was there under the PDS, the regular food subsidy, even when we did not have the free food scheme. So that's been done in a very intelligent manner, I think, to rationalize this particular number and to target it better. So I think what we can expect the government to do is to better target these outlays, what you're calling populist schemes. For example, even if you look at the PM Kisan, I think I read somewhere that the government has stated that the number of beneficiaries have actually probably come down because there's been some kind of a rationalization which has been done out there too. So that's how the amount of outlay for PM Kisan has also reduced marginally. So I think this kind of a process will actually continue. And now when we're talking in terms of capital expenditure, see, it's one thing for us to say that the government should spend more. The next issue is actually about the capability of actually executing these many projects. Because if you look at the overall capex of the government, it's based primarily in roads and railways if we keep defense outside it. So there's also the absorptive capacity. Do I know what I'm going to do? Is it possible for me to keep constructing more and more highways, more and more railway carriages, more and more Vande Bharat trains? So I think there is also, this is what I call the implementation capability or the capacity of any particular government. So I don't think we can see that kind of an acceleration in the capex outlay of the government. What we saw 20-30% increase in the last couple of years is not what we're going to see now. It's going to be more kind of a modest, maybe 5%, 10% on an annual basis. And I think this is something which the FM had also mentioned during the interim budget, that we cannot continue on the high base to keep having this 20-30% growth every year.
Shankar, among the 5 major categories of central government expenditure, rural expenditure, welfare spending and transfer payments have averaged around 3% of GDP. They seem to be reverting to the earlier trend line. Is rural expenditure one of the key areas that the finance ministry needs to focus on, because that's also directly linked to the recent political outcome that we saw?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we must keep in mind is that the interim budget already accommodated the capex that was required for the infrastructure push. And there are limitations to how much the infrastructure push can bring in. So to my mind, the welfare or capex is not a either or question, but a both question. The question is, the issue before the government really is how do they design the policy for maximum bang? So they might sort of ease some of the things, some of the supply constraints for the urban economy. But in the rural economy, it is very clear that they will have to push up the program of housing, the PM Awas Yojana, that will create some amount, a similar push as infrastructure does. The rooftop solar is another scheme which has potential to bring down the costs of households and also the subsidy levels of governments in the states. It has also capillary action. Think of this rooftop solar program as what we saw in the 90s for those who were born around that time when cable TV spread across the country. So there you will see some amount of enterprise growth. You will see some amount of job growth through this because it is a new field and a new endeavor of the government. The third part will be the rural spend will be about, how do we deliver the input cost to the farmers? And that's where I think the government has been struggling. Both the Niti Aayog and the Agriculture Ministry have not been able to sort of bring in the input access and market access stories together.
Right. Absolutely. And viewers, you've seen all three of our guests push back to some extent against this view that there will be a drastic turn towards populism or increased welfare spending, and perhaps a fine balance will be seen in the budget. We'll have to wait for that for the 23rd of July. For now, I'm going to thank all my guests for their time with us today. With that, it's a wrap on this show. We'll be back with more on what to expect from Modinomics 3.0 and the first budget of the third term. See you soon once again.